On this exciting episode, we learn about the way of the samurai, the difference between natural and cultured pearls, and that sneaky pyromaniac streak running deep in our intrepid hero. It's Perry Mason, Season 3, Episode 4, The Case of the Blushing Pearls. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy, and my purpose here is pretty simple: provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do a pod for every episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll look at some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Each episode I'll give a brief refresher on the plot, and if the episode was based on a novel, I'll compare the book with its television adaptation. Next, I'll list some key pieces of trivia, as well as tackle the episode's main theme. We'll feature a Perry Proverb, a moment of wisdom from the man himself, and then we'll finish with a post-case water cooler, where just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can rehash the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library! Each episode in the law library, we investigate some legal conundrum in the episode so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. This episode in the law library, we again had 2 or 3 issues we could have discussed. A fun trial detail involves Mason bickering with Berger about expert witnesses. Perry agrees that Lieutenant Tragg is an expert, so he doesn't have to hear Berger drag out Tragg's bona fides on direct examination.
The defense is quite willing to accept the witness as an expert. Thank you, Mr. Mason.
But when Berger slips into expert mode himself, that's a bridge too far for Perry.
I should like these natural rosé pearls valued at almost $200,000 entered into evidence and marked for the people.
Your Honor. Shouldn't Mr. Berger be sworn in?
Sworn in, Mr. Mason?
I believe it's customary to be under oath when giving testimony.
Perhaps we'll return to that issue of expert witnesses in another episode. Our main reason for coming to the law library today is to investigate bail posting. I don't know that we've ever seen bail posted for them in the show. It seems like we never get the bail scenes in the TV eps, though it seems like we get an awful lot of them in the made-for-TV movies. Time killers! So our protagonist and future murder defendant Mitsu has been arrested for robbery, and the bail judge gives her the conditions.
Since it appears that a public offense has been committed, it is ordered that Mitsu Kimura be admitted to bail in the sum of $5,000 pending trial, and be committed to the sheriff of the county of Los Angeles until she gives such bail.
$5,000 in 1959, that's about $50,000 in 2022 cash. Who shows up to pay it? The very man who put her behind bars.
Your Honor, I would like to post bail for Miss Kimura.
What is your name, sir?
Hudson Nichols. I have the money here.
Clerk of the court will receive bail and give you a receipt, Mr. Nichols.
Now, we don't get a precise charge. I'm guessing the charge is grand larceny. Note, anything over $950 that you've stolen is considered grand rather than petty larceny in the state of California. That dollar amount would put the bail right in the middle of a typical grand larceny bail, which can run anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000. Remember that a bail amount, not so much a reflection of the severity of the crime as it is an estimation of the defendant's perceived threat to the community and possible flight risk. I guess they're worried about Mitsu fleeing the country. $5,000's enough to make her think twice about that. As for Mr. Nichols, we'll deal with that dude soon enough. Now, let's get to the plot. of this episode. The Case of the Blushing Pearls. Mitsu is a young Japanese-American woman just trying to get along in post-war LA. All she wants is for people to say her name correctly. It's not going to happen. Here's a montage.
Mitsu Kimura.
For Miss Kimura. Mitsu?
Mitsu.
Mitsu Kamori.
Mitsu. Miss Kimura.
Mitsu.
By the way, you represent Mitsu Kimura.
Not since Claire Olger in The Case of the Haunted Husband has one character's name been so randomly pronounced. Things are complicated enough for Mitsu. She's in a relationship with Grove Nichols, a spoiled brat of a rich boy, and Grove's papa ain't pleased.
You must realize that Grove is going to take my place someday. Grove will have his civic and social obligations, and so will his wife.
I understand, Mr. Nichols. You would like him to marry someone like Miss Carson.
Yes.
Mitsu's in a legal frame-up when she discovers rose blushing pearls, you know, the ones that belong to Grove's stepmother, in her home.
There was nearly $250,000.
Finally, she's in additional social trouble. When she finds the pearls, she calls on her friend Toma, the man who keeps books for Mitsu's pearl-selling uncle. Then comes the private eye with a camera precisely at the moment Toma is giving Mitsu a reassuring hug. Uh-oh.
Well, that does it, Mr. Nichols.
Yes, I guess it does.
While Papa Nichols claims he didn't set up the sting, he does hope to profit from it by getting Mitsu out of Grove's life. Did I mention that Grove is a brat? He is. Hard to root for, if you know what I mean. Here's a typical Grove jag.
Up to now, you've never even bothered to deny it when you've taken away something I've wanted. It's always been, it's for your own good, Grove.
I can't deny that I was disturbed by Mitsu, but
A watercolor set when I was 7 years old. Algebra instead of art course in high school. Business administration instead of architecture after college. And now, Alice instead of Mitsu. All for my own good.
Okay, so Perry's checking out pearls with Della, goes into the store that Mitsu's uncle owns. Mitsu importunes Della. Next thing we know, Perry's hearing her case as he and Della and Mitsu sit on the ground around a Japanese table. She just hasn't made her mind up about Grove yet.
Are you in love with him?
I'm drawn to Grove, but my heart has not yet spoken, Mr. Mason.
From one Perry fan to a Perry character, run for the hills, Mitsu! Of course, the grand irony, Papa Nichols had already asked Perry to defend Mitsu, offering big cash. Grander still, here's what Perry gets from Mitsu as a retainer.
Della, when we get back to the office, make a notation that we received a retainer from Miss Kimura in the sum of 5 yen.
Now, you may want to double check my math, but by my figurations, Mitsu's retainer was the 1959 equivalent of 3 cents. That's how much 5 yen would have gotten you in 1959. Well, Grove is upset and he wants answers, but Grove can't have them.
You mean you won't tell me because it's a matter of business ethics, huh? I don't believe it.
I am sorry.
You made them up for Mitsu, didn't you?
Mitsu goes to see her uncle and finds him, dun-dun-dun, dead. It initially looks like Harikiri. You're the expert, Trag. Tell us about it.
Harakiri is committed in a kneeling position, and as the body tumbles forward, it dislodges the hands from the sword handle.
But Perry sniffed out problems with that theory from the start.
Your uncle was very proud of being a samurai, wasn't he?
Yes, very proud.
Yet there was no ceremonial robe.
No,
And no red rug.
no, there wasn't.
And the wound?
Okay, let's get our suspects straight. Toma? No, he's just guilty of love in the first degree.
I offered to take the pearls back for Mitsu because I love her.
Thelma Nichols? Well, she did hire that sleazy private eye, Edgar Beals. You know, the one who shows up to say things like this.
Following people is my business, Mr. Mason. And selling information.
But guilty of murder? I don't think so. She was too busy.
I have dozens of things I should be doing.
Itsubi Nogata, the resident pearl expert? Nah, he's just guilty as grand larceny stealing the rosé pearls, a fact that Perry confirms by literally smoking Nogata out of his apartment.
Got a match? You're not going through with this, are you? Match. It could land us both in jail.
Which would you rather do? Go to jail or have an innocent girl convicted of murder? Now, come on, give me a match.
Well, I don't believe she knows about that.
Mr. Nagata, the house, it's on fire. Quick, let's get out of here before we're trapped.
You run, Miss 3. Out of building. I will follow.
And while we're here, Mr. Nagata, kindly explain to us the difference between natural and cultured pearls.
Cultured pearls are formed around a round bead, which has been put in the oyster shell. Natural pearls are formed around bits of sand or shell, quite irregular in shape.
Grove Nichols? Nah, he's too petulant in those short shorts he's wearing in that pool scene with Miss Carson and his stepmother. Maybe they're from the Johnny Clay collection? That dude was wearing some short shorts in the case of the Garrulous Gambler. Inhibit movement and pretty much make him unable to carry out a rational plan. What about Alice Carson, aka Grove's other girl? Well, she's certainly guilty of framing Mitsu.
I felt Grove slipping away from me and becoming more and more interested in Mitsu. And I just couldn't bear that. You see, I had always dreamed about marrying Grove, ever since I was a little girl.
When did you decide to take action against Mitsu?
The night I saw her trying on the pearls, I went to Mr. Kamuri and I paid him $5,000 to make up a matching set. And then I took Thelma's pearls and then I put the others in their place.
And then you planted what you...
But murder? Nah, that was Papa Nichols. Blubber about it a while, Hudson.
He wanted me to make a clean breast of the whole thing. I had to kill him. It would have ruined me.
All's well that ends well. Perry, Della, and Paul share a meal with Mitsu and Toma, the new couple. What's up with Grove?
I know now that Grove was only courting me to defy his father.
We saw that one coming a mile away, Mitsu. Meanwhile, Berger sticks Perry with some low-level charge and the whole thing gets a big old Paul Drake guffaw.
Citation for burning trash without a permit.
Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. A Della is something about a particular actor or actress in the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. You get 2 Pauls for the price of 1 in this episode. A fun exchange between Perry and Della gives us the first of our prompts.
I just can't understand this sudden interest in Japanese things, Perry.
Well, didn't you say you had to buy an anniversary present for your aunt?
Yes, but
What's wrong with a string of pearls?
on a secretary's salary?
Okay, so what do you think Della's salary is? She ends up buying a $35 set of pearls for her aunt. That can't be what she makes a day, right? It doesn't make sense that that's what she makes during a week either. If a week, she was making the equivalent of less than $30K a year in 2022 bucks. I don't think Perry's shorting her that much. And if that's how much she makes a day, she's up around $65,000 a year in 2022 cash, which seems like a lot. But hey, I don't know. You got any ideas? Our second Paul prompt is more a writing exercise. Do some research on Seppuku, which is the Japanese method of ritual death. Harikiri is the most well-known form of Seppuku. And then put together a, if it has these features, checklist for future lieutenant trags who have to correctly identify whether they're seeing an example of Harikiri or, in the case of the Blushing Pearls, just somebody who got murdered and whose death is meant to look like a ritual death. Our Della this episode, well, it could only really be one person, George Takei, aka Toma Sakai.
Now don't cry.
10 about Toma. Number 1, Takei was born in 1937 in LA. His family worked in real estate. His father named him George after King George VI of England, who had just been coronated. Takei is a noted Britannophile. Number 2, in 1942, Takei and his family spent time in 3 different Japanese internment camps, experiences that Takei has returned to in subsequent decades. The family lost all their assets during the internment and consequently lived on Skid Row for 5 years following World War II. Number 3, Takei studied architecture at Cal Berkeley, but ended up getting his undergraduate degree in drama from UCLA in 1960, which means, yes, he was still an undergrad when he appeared as Toma on Perry Mason. Number 4, the Perry Mason episode was the second time Takei appeared on screen with Nobu McCarthy, the actress who portrayed Mitsu. Here's how Takei described his experience on the show in his memoir, To the Stars. As indispensable to an actor's career as a key to a locked door is that one crucial person we call an agent. I had him now in Fred Ishimoto, who agreed to keep his eyes open for projects right for me while I was still at UCLA. The labyrinthine corridors of Hollywood, however, have many locked doors, and an actor requires more than one friend with a key to open them. Another such friend now was Herbie Hirschman, my Playhouse 90 director. Herbie liked what I had done on the show, so when he began work on his next project, he asked for both Nobu McCarthy and me. The production was the popular television series Perry Mason, starring Raymond Burr. Again, Nobu and I were teamed as ill-fated lovers. This time, the story involved the theft of a rare blushing pearl and murder. Just from that short description, you could tell that Takei hasn't revisited the episode lately. It's more than just one pearl, George. It's a lot of pearls. It's a string. And to say that Nobu and he, aka Mitsu and he, are ill-fated lovers isn't quite accurate. It's okay. Takei has bigger stars to visit. Number 5. Takei's big break, of course, came in 1965 when he was chosen for the role of Lieutenant Sulu on Star Trek.
A pretty bold statement for an ensign, with only 2 months space duty under his belt.
Number 6. During the second season of Star Trek, Takei was only on air for half the episodes because he was filming, wait for it, The Green Berets alongside John Wayne. Number 7. Takei appeared as Sulu in the 70s animated Star Trek show, all of the subsequent Star Trek movies, and many subsequent Star Trek TV series. It's basically the role that defines him. Number 8. Takei got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1986 and wrote his memoir in 1994 called To the Stars. Number 9. Takei came out as gay in 2005 and has since been an advocate for LGBT rights with his husband, Brad Altman. And number 10. The Broadway musical Allegiance, inspired by Takei's experience and actually starring Takei, ran from 2012 to 2015. In 2020, he released a co-written book called They Called Us Enemy, about his family's time in those camps, and that book won an American Book Award in 2020. He's still alive. Our Perry for this episode. I love it when we get nuggets about cases our man has been trying outside of the TV series. Mitsu's uncle gives us a hint about one such case.
You once saved the life of a countryman of mine, Kentaro Toyama.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Mr. Mason, just a follow-up question, Mr. Mason. Can you describe the nature of the case? Was it murder, pearl smuggling? Was it a civil case, criminal case? Give us details! The theme for this episode is nature versus culture. Here's Mitsu talking about Japanese culture as the episode comes to an end.
It is a civilization which is older and gentler than here. The quiet enjoyments are very important.
That's right. I think we hurry and rush things too much.
Oh, I agree with that.
That's a good baseline for talking about American versus Japanese culture. But are those cultures better than nature? You know the difference, of course. Nature happens, well, naturally. That's what makes the real rosé necklace more valuable. And look at the major downer culture can be.
You must realize that Grove is going to take my place someday. Grove will have his civic and social obligations, and so will his wife.
Mr. Nichols saying Mitsu won't do, my dude, look at your son. I don't think Mrs. Nichols will be the thing preventing Grove from having a skyrocketing business career. 2 minutes around that guy, you can tell it's not going to happen. Also conspicuous, Grove and Mitsu meet in an art class. Very definition of culture. But where does nature end and culture begin? The samurai culture seems as dangerous as the hectic American lifestyle, given as it is to pride and the wounded honor that leads to senseless death. The courtroom is cultural. Haven't seen many spontaneously appearing magistrate benches lately. But the truth is not cultural. Perry uses culture, the courtroom, the legal system, to defend nature's truth, which is this: you don't take human life. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb. You don't always have to come up with your own wisdom. Sometimes it's sufficient to be a walking Bartlett's and deploy a memorized aphorism in the right situation. Take it away, Perry.
Now, there's an old saying: he who plays with fire sometimes throws light on situation.
I guess if you can help catch a murderer, it's worth paying the citation for burning trash. Just a comment here on an episode which is largely about cultural insensitivity. This aphorism sounds more like Bowdlerized version of Confucianism than some ancient Japanese proverb. Confucius was Chinese, for the record, not Japanese. Maybe Perry did deserve that fine, just not for the reason he thinks. Now, let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
There is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we offer deleted scenes where we imagine some sequences that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Number 1, we get a montage of characters, including Paul Drake and Edgar Beals, holding Thelma Nichols' pearls up to their neck. Number 2, in a quick rundown of LA Private Eyes, it turns out that other than Paul, Edgar Beals is the most upstanding of them all. Alice Carson was looking for a good PI and she got one, I guess. Listener Tim Cree wrote in to say, what is up with the other options for private investigators in LA? I know they're all sleazy. Number 3, we get a shot of Hamilton Berger giving himself a pep talk for the day's trial proceedings while tying that bow tie. Man, he's been trotting it out like a champ in season 3. We'll talk about what happened to Bill Tallman later in the season. Number 4, Paul brags that he was weaned on Japanese food and then has to guzzle a carafe of water after inhaling a quarter cup of wasabi. And number 5, Perry keeps bringing up the Sulu Sea in conversation with George Takei's Toma and pointing to his forehead. You know, Perry prognostication or foreshadowing. Our Paul prompt from the Case of the Garrulous Gambler. Tell us about the connection between invisible ink and dry cleaning.
That jacket was identified by the cleaners as belonging to Mr. Granger. It bears his mark. No, you can't see it that way. They use an ink that's only visible under ultraviolet light.
I uncovered a very interesting 1954 report on how to read laundry and dry cleaning files when investigating a crime. The gist of the report was that sometimes an article of clothing is the only evidence you have to identify a criminal, so you need to know how to read those laundry marks. The report indicated that some stores were using the Phantom Fast system that would allow the store to write the customer's name and a 5-dot symbol that identified the store in invisible ink. It was a throwaway line inside the larger report, but it proved that such technology, ink that could only be seen with ultraviolet light, existed in 1954 and was being used enough that crime solvers out there needed to know about it. In fact, you can find the Phantom, F-A-N-T-O-M, Fast product line still available on the web. As always, I'd love feedback about this particular episode or the podcast in general. Was there something about the episode you'd like to comment on or correct? Please send me an email at theperrypod@gmail.com. All PerryPod episodes are available via Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. Next time, Perry defends the daughter of one of his very good friends. Also, there's a horse involved. It's the case of the startled stallion. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat.